All
Good
right.
evening. Good
Go ahead.
evening, Coco. I am your co-host, Chaplain K, here with Mr. Chocolate, and we have a guest in our audience tonight, Miss Rasia. Um, Tonight, as you can see in our title, we're going to talk about the structures of societies ran by the elites. And Mr. Chocolate is going to give us some really good information that talks about how elites run the world and run under different titles. And for the most part, we kind of don't understand the titles, or we don't know how these titles are interrelated. But they still are the same group of people who are the power structure. That's it in a nutshell, regardless if we call them presidents, kings, or whatever. These are the power structures that runs the societies. And know this, audience, that these are the groups who decided to colonize the world. So if nothing else, that's a clue to show you that we're not a part of that group. And these are the people we need to start being aware of and how they operate. Also, how they have given us an illusion of who they are and who we are, and taught us ignorance. And then there is ignorance we've learned on our own. But in order for us to change these dynamics, it is going to be imperative that we learn truth. So, with that being said, I want you guys to be also aware that we're running on we're running a new software, so it's a little bit of a delay, about 8 seconds. So, Mr. Chocolate is going to come to us before I just give you the scenarios for each one of these, and he's going to give us some definitions that we need to start looking out for as we continue to proceed to expand our imagination on how we understand this thing we call life, or this journey we call life. And with that, here's Mr. Chocolate.
All right. How y'all doing? We got some definitions and terms that we have to speak on to give further context to the conversation. Uh, uh, First one that comes to mind is e- a king, a person a person born into a hereditary rulership and rule for life. Czar, that's CZAR, a Russian ruler or ruler of Russia, a ruler of Russia and person of great power and authority. Next is emperor. sovereign or supreme male ruler. The next is sultan, a king or sovereign of a Muslim state. All right. The next word is dictator, a person granted absolute emergency power. Wow. A person granted absolute emergency power. That's crazy. Emergency is the word that gets me. All right, a corporation, a body formed, authorized by law to act as a single person, legally endowed with rights such as succession. Fascists, a regime that exalts a nation and or a race to stand for centralized government under a dictator. A Nazi, German fascist that controlled Germany from Adolf Hitler, who was the dictator at that time. President, an elected official serving as the chief of state and chief executive in a republic government. Nationality, national status involving allegiance and protection under the state in which they live. Ethnicity, ethnic affiliation. Caesar, colonizer, a nation or state to take control of people or land to extend the power of an area or empire. And the last one is imperialist, the policy, practice, or advocacy of extending the power and dominion of a nation by direct territorial acquisition or by indirect political or economic life of other areas. And they all kind of tie into each other. That was it.
Hello.
Hello?
What happened?
I do not know. Can you hear me now?
I hear a lot of feedback. It's like there has been some type of technical difficulty.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Another link just dropped showing as if someone
That's
else is in the chat. I don't I don't know if
That's
that has to
that's
do
that's
with,
that's me. I
that's me.
signed in through my
I
but
tablet.
signed in to tablet.
okay, but both of them are coming through, so it's giving a bad feedback because both of them are working simultaneously.
Can you hear me now?
Audience, we do apologize. We're having a lot of difficulty. I'm not sure if we you want me to try to keep going. I mean, if you want to mute
Yes.
and see how far we can get with it. Okay. Well,
No, you're good.
I appreciate Mr. Chocolate giving us those definitions. And you guys might be asking, why is he giving those definitions? Because they're necessary. Because right now we're in a situation where World War III is about to pop off. Not because of this idea that Christians use of Armageddon, because all of those terror threats and all of the uh, terrorism that has been done around the world for the past. Let's go back to Caesar, since Caesar is one of the first people and the first empire that you see of European descent. When Caesar was killed, and for many of you guys who went to school and you learn about Julius Caesar was killed by the elites. They killed him because Julius Caesar's joked like Donald Trump and said he wanted to be a dictator, and they took him very serious. The only difference now is you have people who think it's okay for Donald Trump to be a dictator, and he does not have any of the intellect that Caesar had. But the point I want you guys to see, it was the elites of Caesar's day, because he was doing something they had not thought of. And that's not helpful when Europeans don't think of things first, because you become deleted really quick. Because that's what the Senate, notice that word? That's the same stuff that we use now. The leaders who ran the government were called the Senate. And the Senate decided that Caesar had to go. And of course, William Shakespeare put it in a nice play. But that nice play was about a real murder that was done. And they have continued to practice this type of government for 2,000 years. And they've been hijacking everybody else's government to make theirs work. Such as, now we have a president. Well, president and governors ran what you call the Middle East, but what used to be the western part, the far east part of the area that is now known as Africa, that was a part of the pharaonic, as Europeans call it, empire. They call it a dynasty. That's what the people of their day, the people we call the region of Kemet, they call themselves Kemetic people. However, they came from all parts of the known as Egyptians, because the people who actually occupy the leadership that they call Egyptians are not traditionally from the area that we now call Africa. So these are some of the things we need to know. For instance, the people we now call white Americans, not indigenous to this place we call America. Same thing about the people who have committed genocide in the place they now call, which are the descendant of the people they call Canaanites. Now, there were real Canaanites. but their lives did not line up with the way this thing we call a Bible. And I said these things, I'm using that in reference to historical data, not the religious text, because every form of religion that comes out of what they call the Abrahamic covenant, which are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they come from ancient texts that we call the Babylonian script, the Sanskrit, the Pharaonic script. All of those are ancient texts. The text that from the text that Hammurabi wrote, and it's escaping me because really I didn't plan to go there, but I think I need to go there to make everything make sense and tie together. So everything that we are seeing play out tie into this the Bible. The Bible itself, that text that they have hijacked from very melanated people. If you notice when Mr. Chocolate was giving all of these titles, he didn't talk about anybody that was a pharaoh, because we don't learn about pharaohs other than what the Europeans put in a movie they called the Ten Commandments, and then they made them out to be a villain. That the dynasties of the pharaohs lasted 500 years plus, okay? 500 years plus, and they never tried to invade anybody's territory. They didn't have jails. They didn't have old people home. They didn't have DHS, because there was a society, regardless if they had trouble or quarrels with some of their counterparts. And during the Pharaoh's days, the people, the Canaanites, which was a small independent group of people, which included the Amorites and some of the other, the Pelelites, which you don't see in the Bible. But one of the main groups of people that were during the times of the Pharaoh were the Hittites. Now, for you guys who still practice Christianity, you have to ask yourself the question now, how is it that the Hittites supposed to be a part of Ham? There is no Ham during the time of Hittites, and the Hittites are the counter kingdoms of the pharaohs before the sea people. I'm going to give you a lot of information and titles that you may not have heard of, so you can go try to look up some of these things for yourself. The sea people destroyed the first, which consists of independent states, as they call them. In other words, these groups of people had autonomy from not being under the pharaonic or the pharaoh rule. The pharaoh did not try to force anybody, because the pharaoh rulership, or the dynasty, when they were rulers at that time, they had the Book of the Dead, which included the principles of Ma'at. Ma'at are the principles that you learn to have autonomy over yourself. Pharaonic rulership also had what you call a monotheistic view of God, or the supreme ruler. They had that. Christianity is not the first group of people to have that language, nor are the people who call themselves Muslims are the first people to practice some of the tradition that they practice. Islam come out of what is known as Zoroastrianism. That was the practice of the people that didn't participate under the the pharaohs, which means you still have people who are practicing with autonomy their understanding of what we call a supreme deity that created the heavens and the earth. Islam out of Zoroastrianism. So did Hindu, so did Buddhism. So you got all of these tenets that somehow most of us who practice or used to practice what we call Christianity don't understand the basic that everything Christianity have put in books that are real people, um, they turn all of the stories around from the traditional people and count again in what we call the Middle East. And how does that affect us? Because we still have people who call themselves melinated who will not give truth, will not stand on truth, who still living in what we call this Bible. But at the same time, last week, which was Easter, there was another massacre over in what you call the Holy Land. So we still got an illusion of who we are from the elites who run the world, who continue to pump money into the last colony empires. Because the two empires that are still at work is the American Empire and the British Empire, who work hand in hand. And guess who they're financing? The colony that we now call Israel, who are just killing people left, right, and center. And they kill the people who were trying their best to feed the starving people in Palestine. But to make matters worse, we are not having these conversations in our own circle. And how does that relate to us? Because everything relates to us. Anytime people can erase your history, which Europeans have been doing since they came out the cave, and I like to call the Europeans pale-skinned Negroes, because if we're going to have an image in our head, we have to get rid of some of the illusions that we have been taught. We have been taught an illusion that Europeans got some type of special effect. They have some type of specialness, so people kill each other to be a part of or cape for the elites. And the elites, white supremacy, they have no desire to do anything but keep power. We wanted to try to start this particular month of April in what we call the Neely Fuller series, because Neely Fuller and Dr. Chris Wessing tried to teach us that if we don't understand white supremacy, and I like to say white supremacy is a spirit. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but you know in your spirit when it's operating contrary to your existence. White supremacy has disguised itself as being, as we say, monarch, czar, dictator. All of these are people who have declared themselves, to put it in simpler terms, they have declared themselves to be the God of this earth. So if you can think in terms of that, when you look at these titles, then you will see white supremacy at work. Because you see this spirit operating to manipulate the masses, to control the masses, to keep the masses fighting. Hello?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard something through that. I was trying to kind of stay in the zone. That's a lot. Illusion that we have some type of leverage with voting is just that, an illusion. But some of the things I noticed this week that trying to bring this context together, I looked at the situation we talked about last month, talked about the HBCUs and why they're important. Just past week, and I'm just going to give you incidents of this past week, and I need you to just figure out for yourself. What is this the spirit of? The United States have declared that 13 of the land grant HBCUs have been cheated out of money. This week, Tennessee State decided and the state of Tennessee owe over $1.3 billion to Tennessee State. And the governor has decided that he wants to dismiss the whole advisory board for the school. So think about that for yourself. Is that another way of economic using the power of white supremacy to keep us away from what's ours? I would say yes. But in order for us to even try to grapple and bring all of these pieces together, and how did we get here? We need a whole army, have more than a 1 hour presentation where the live stream doesn't mess up so we can actually stay focused. It would be nice if we had the technology that better content creators have, but we don't. So we work with what we got, and sometimes we get the information kind of disjointed, like tonight. But at the same time, we keep pushing forward, because as all the things I'm going to present tonight, we're going to put it in the chat. So even if the presentation itself seems a little disjointed, once you look at some of the, and if not some, but all of the information that we thought we were going to be able to put together in a succinct order, hopefully you can make sense of it for yourself to see how many arenas that we need to be in, how much we've been lied to by the elites, how much ignorance we have. Some of these so-called leaders, like the minority leader Clyburn, still does not know that Israel is committing a genocide. That is an indication on how much we have too many us who are afraid to say that this is a genocide. They kill the workers who were delivering food, but somehow, since he gets his money from the white elites who call themselves Jews in this country and Israel, they have to decide, meaning the power structure, the elites have to decide whether or not this is a genocide, as if we can't see and make a decision for ourselves. Somehow their mindset is still in the 1800s, when if they told you one thing, that's what it was. But we don't live there anymore. We make our own decision. We have autonomy in how we look at information and disseminate it for ourselves. But it's not enough of us who have power to make that work. So when we see people like Claiborne, who continues to get money from his white paper, gaslighting not only to the American public, but primarily, this is a man who came out of the Gully Geecher culture, okay? If you understand the people from South Carolina, then you understand that this is an insult to all of the elders who gave birth to him and Clarence Thomas. He also has his niece, or whomever that lady is, who goes to the United Nations, who continues to cape. So it's really difficult for us to say other than the elites, because we have too many dark faces who cape just as hard for the elites, who look just like us, who is a detriment to us. That is the reason, because the people have not stood up for the students at the universities. So this past week, as I stated earlier, you have the president of the student body, student government at Tennessee State, talked about how it's time for students on HBCU campuses to unite, because that is the only way they're going to get their voices. It's not going to come through the leadership of the actual schools. It's going to come through the students, because that's what students have always done. But now we have to kind of teach them that they got to take the bull by the horn, because when the young people did it in the 60s, they had the adults standing with. They saw Stokely Carmichael and all of the student advocates go to jail in the 60s. They had adults bailing them out. These were 20 and 21-year-olds. You don't have anybody doing that now. You have too many older, but I'm talking about all these people in Congress right now, and holding up these positions and quote unquote being these so-called influencers who are in Hollywood, whatever you want to call it, who are not doing anything to help us make this happen. So we're on our own. We're on our own. And I put 3 videos in there, so you don't just see the young person who is speaking and who held a conference to talk up, to sound the alarm that these extremists, such as government. So we got war that's being fought there in the Middle East. You got war that's being fought in Russia and Ukraine. And we have war on our citizenry every day in this country. Black people are getting all kinds of stuff coming at them, such as the young man who used to be on Donald Trump's payroll, call himself an advisor. His name is Stephen Miller. Like I said, write some of these things down in Google. I'm hoping this information is not overwhelming, but at the same time, I hope that you see the magnitude of how much we are facing at the same time. Because Stephen Miller, whose parents came from Russia in World War I, and quote unquote, he is a Jewish person, but he's very hateful. You got to start asking yourself the question, what is, should I even, I'm going to let you decide. Because at this point, what I care about as the person behind this mic trying to help you guys is how much I can empower you to empower somebody else to do what need to be done, because we're our only support. Next example, Eric Adams. Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City. Everybody knows New York City is the largest city in the United States. Just a couple of days ago, a city council person ate Eric Adams' lunch. Everything Eric Adams has been his paycheck from the elites. But he lived in an illusion thinking he had power because now they're throwing him on the bus. But he thought we were ignorant. But he had a city council person, and she starts her podcast off, and I put it in there so you can see it. It's not very long. It's about less than 25 minutes, but she spent 22 minutes fact-checking everything Eric Adams has said about not only the immigrants, but the so-called police in New York City, and then how he treats people that he deemed as not, shouldn't be respected. So you have to watch the double talk that any of these Black people are doing in our faces, just totally disrespecting everything that they say people use quickly, where our people died and fought for the right to vote. I would say, yes, they did. However, that's not what's going on now. We had too many Black people in position who've already sold us out. So it's like, how do we get rid of them? That's where we are. Because he, like Brandon Johnson, have been working for Joe Biden to live, get food on. And then we got older people in this country who can't even get their medication. And if I sound like I'm frustrated, it's probably because I am. I am sick of seeing people think we just stupid and they can play in our faces. And I'm hoping that there are more young people who are just tuning in. And I'm loving you, parents. The majority of sorry that we didn't say this earlier. I'm happy to see the algorithm saying there are a lot of parents are listening. I'm hoping you're giving this information to your children and that you are preparing them. Because one thing, like I said, the technical difficulty even ruined my introduction. The introduction was supposed to have been, if you die tonight, what will you leave your children as a legacy? I'm going to sit there for a moment and let you think about that. Because if the legacy is not to survive, then that's something that we need to work on. Because if they don't have you here, they need to know how to navigate everything that I'm talking about. We have a leader that comes out of Kenya that's trying to educate the whole continent. Can you imagine a person trying to educate 54 leaders on a landmass that one of the countries, okay? Just give you the magnitude of what we're up against. The Congo is bigger than Europe, okay? But we got a continent with all melinated people who have been nothing but mouthpieces, like our politicians here. Now I'm using his words, not mine. Yellow Malumba. But he gave a message to the young leaders who are taking over this leadership on the continent, because we need young people. We need young people and young energy, because old people have sold out or they have gotten paid off, and the only thing they want to do is be comfortable. And the energy of white supremacy is never going to be comfortable. We see that with, and this is not even a part of the conversation that I listed here, but you see that with Sean Combs. Sean Combs have lived in the United States and the world and are doing things that people say he need to be in jail for. But Sean Combs is a little fish in a big ocean that's been doing all of this ratchetness. This behavior, if you want to look at Sean Combs, just think of it in terms of this is the behavior of the elites. Because everybody who invested in making Sean Combs who he is, you don't know their faces. And all of their faces are pale skin. And this is their behavior. His behavior as far as running the kind of enterprise that he did, that's the same thing these people call that in the early days from 1650 up until the 1700s. They call them pirates and privateers. That's the same thing we're doing now. And they had brothels. So as we're seeing these things unfold, we must know that if we're going to change the dynamics, we have to become politically educated. We can't be savvy if we're not educated in politics. That was an old saying in the country that you don't mix politics and religion. Well, once you start learning history, you will know that this idea of religion was a military weapon before it became part of a social construct. That's what happened with the people who started the tradition they call Islam. That's what happened when the people who started the tradition they call Christianity. It was a military operation. And that is the same operation we see going on right now in it's a military operation in World War I. But they actually laid the groundwork back in the 1800s when they colonized and cut up the continent. They have been using all of this to mind manipulate us. And if we're going to set ourselves free, we must know truth. And truth is going to cause us to do some hard, some deep dives into some hard information. Lumumba is talking to the people on the continent, whereas our next door neighbor we call Haiti is experiencing trauma also. And the way that it's been presented to us is the gangs of Haiti. They never said the militias who freed themselves back in the 1800s. So that spirit is not going to leave the people who are fighting for their mere freedom. As well as it kept in the 1800s, Haiti overthrew France, but in 1915, the United States occupied Haiti again. That part of history get left out. Because the United States, just like all of the Europeans who have actually colonized everything, the United States are Europeans in the Americas. And these colonizers, this premise that we call whiteness, it has to be dismantled. It has to be dismantled the same way Stephen Miller and Governor Ron DeSantis think they're going to dismantle our history. You see how that is a dynamic that is going to butt heads? So just like they're fighting, trying to maintain their privileges, we're maintaining our life. And that's really how we have to start putting the information out. We're trying to maintain our lives, and we're trying to make a space for the children who are coming after us. We'll never be a slave, and I mean a slave in employment, because as long as you work for people who don't look like us, who continue to suck all the life out of our institution, we will continue to be slaves, because we don't even have freedom of speech. So these are the things we're looking at. And let's not forget that the United States still trying to send money to Ukraine. And Ukraine decided to throw all of the Black people. And we're talking about people who are actually citizens of Ukraine with dark skin. Okay. Ukrainian, they've been over there long enough so they can become citizens. But when the war started, the Ukrainian army, with their racist force, they started doing the same thing the militias, or what they call the Proud Boys, or the January 6 people, they were doing the same thing there, because part of white supremacy is to have militias to back them up. So the work that they can't just do in the public, they have their militias to do it on the side. So it doesn't matter where we are. White supremacy is trying to destroy the melanin that really is the foundation of the earth. And hopefully we will start looking at ourselves as the melanin and the foundation of the earth, and not just individual people. Because if nothing else, that spirit knows how to unify to destroy melanin. It has become quite proficient at it. And lest I forget, for you guys who may have relatives on the continent, hopefully you will look at one of the links that we will put in the chat, and let some of your relatives become aware that Russia is not your friend. Even though Russia is forgiving some of the debt of, has not been revealed. But Russia was no different than the rest of the colonizers back in the 1800s, in the early 1900s. They were just too far away to participate in the colonization. They tried, they wanted to. And for those of you who still consider yourself Christian, you got to ask yourself the question, why is it that Vladimir Putin is just now unveiling those pictures that they have been hiding in their vaults and in their private collections of the black faces of the so-called be Jesus and all the disciples? Why have they hid that, and why is he bringing it out now? These are the things we have to ask ourselves the question, not just get excited because we see a picture that has melanin on it. Of course it got melanin on it, because the first people who occupied the earth, they all were melanin. Until some melanated people had some melanin deficient babies. But the part that we don't understand about history, because we haven't been taught about chemistry and And by our age, if you stay climates long enough, then your hair will change, your complexion change. And if you're born with a deficiency, of course you're going to have blue eyes, and of course you're going to have very fair skin. But I also have a video in the links for you to look at a group of people who live in Ohio. And they call themselves, they say they're Black. Now I want you guys to get a visual, because as I stated earlier, we have been taught illusions. We've also been taught how to look at things in imagery, in the image of, and it's made less than 10 minutes. But these group of people, they make the statement, pretty much what I'm saying now, that they call themselves Black, but to look at them, you would say, no, they're not. But yes, they are. Because pale-skinned people came from melanated people. But when you're talking 50,000 years, you get what we have. But these people have also killed all the dark-skinned people that were in their areas. And then dark-skinned people continue to do they continue to do the Kamala Harris type stuff, the Candace Owens type stuff. And I can think of a few other people who pretend that somehow they're with the community. I'm not knocking these people who they marry, but if you forget about your own culture because you're trying to fit into a deficiency, then something is wrong with that dynamic. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing all of this play out. It really is. It's playing out in our faces. But I hope you guys, I hope that is enough for us to see, because there are some truths for us to uncover. And I tried to put a few videos in there, a few links to some videos for you guys just to look at some things for yourself, instead of trying to give a whole scenario, because it's all rolling at us at one time. And perhaps maybe if we start looking at the elites and whites as being synonymous, we can in the place we call India, who are darker than probably half of you guys on here. And they're called Brahmins. But their mentality is just like those who came out of Europe. Remember the young man who was running for president? Vivek Ramaswamy. It's called a caste system. Caste systems are part of white supremacy. So hopefully we'll be able to learn to put some links together and have some aha moments and make some of this stuff make sense. And I hope if you have questions that you put them in the chat. And I hope you guys continue to tune in as we find out what's making the stream hit and miss and have such a long delay, so we can't interact the way we normally would on the live stream. And I hope you guys learned something this evening. We'll be back next week. And as Mr. Chocolate says, stay ready. And that's a true statement. We do need to stay ready. We need to keep our head on swivel. Because if we're ready, we don't have to get ready. And in order for us to tackle what's, I land my plane.
All right. Sorry about that confusion and technical difficulty and stuff. That's all we have. We'll be back next week, same time. Like she said, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. All right. Bye-bye now. Peace.